EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here with John McMullen, Eagles beat reporter. I'm Zander, Krause, your host. Thanks, everybody, for being in here this morning. Make sure you drop that like button on your way in. Appreciate everybody. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Thursday? It is game day, brother.
Yeah, game day. Preseason football against the New England Patriots. It is a game day.
It is a
I
game
don't
day,
know
John.
if it's got the feel of a real game day, but it is a game day. So, hey, it's always fun to play dress up, and that's what the Eagles will do. I don't expect to see the offensive starters. Defensively, you never know with Vic, but if you do see them, it's going to be very short cameos. So be prepared for that. I think you're going to see a lot of Kenny Pickett, a lot of Tanner McKee, hopefully a lot of Tanner McKee because that's better than the alternative. And similar to last week, we'll see how vanilla Kellen Moore stays. My guess is pretty vanilla since they did all their work on Tuesday.
Yeah, you think anybody on? I mean, I know you just kind of said we'll see, but if they do go defensive starters, you think they'd go everyone? You think they'd go, just the fringe guys?
Not everyone. Certainly not Slay. Similar to last week. Certainly not Brandon. Those guys.
Guys like Jalen Carter.
Yeah, I mean they played 4 snaps last. So I mean you might see a series. I would not play them, but I only leave that door open because of Vic's sort of old school mentality. Evidently, from all indications, the defensive front was tremendous in the practice. So I think they've kind of proven themselves. And maybe some of the issues was going against their own offensive line. So I would play it cautious, but I just leave that slight door ajar because Vic tends to do what he wants to do. And if he wants the younger players to get a little bit of work, he'll throw them out there, but for a very short period, much like last week in Baltimore.
So what's the third preseason game? It's the Vikings. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's Minnesota. If they have enough players, that poor team, that poor tortured organization.
They are struggling right now.
Yeah. I mean, crazy statistic with JJ McCarthy in that no quarterback drafted in the first round has ever since 1967 has ever been ruled out before game 1 who's been picked that high. So disaster for them, but it's good you brought that team up because stop with people go back to the Sam Bradford trade, which was a great trade for the Eagles. Actually, the Vikings suffered a catastrophic injury to Teddy Bridgewater. Their backup was Sean Hall. The Vikings have Sam Darnold. They're paying him $10 million. They were starting him week 1 anyway. Now, I'm not saying he's a great quarterback, but they already had their plan in place. Plus, Kenny Pickett is here for 2 years. He's cost effective. He's not an aging Sam Bradford. They brought him in to be the backup. I saw somebody with Derek Carr. The Vikings just got out of Kirk Cousins. They're not going to pay Derek Carr. JJ McCarthy's not dead. He's going to be back next year. So I did it my stop it thing. So stop it.
Stop it. I think Sam Darnold is I think he's a pretty good backup. I mean, he's probably a better backup than Kenny Pickett is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But now he's
comparable.
He is, but he was always the starter. He was going to be the starter week 1 with JJ. They're going to take it slow. But, JJ played so well in the first preseason game for them that people got really excited. They were still going to start Sam Darnold. Now, long term, I have a little bit of interest in him because he got to be with Kyle Shanahan last year. And maybe that could be a reclamation, much like Geno Smith was coming out of the disastrous New York Jets organization. But that's for them to decide. They'll be in here week 3, but they're not trading for Kenny Pickett because of desperation.
Yeah, no, not going to do that. But when is that game next week? Is that back to a Sunday schedule?
No, that's the rare Saturday, I believe Saturday
Yeah.
1:00 game. Um, and that's right before the final cut, which will be
Yeah,
Tuesday
Saturday
of the
1.
next week.
Yeah,
Yeah, Saturday 1:00. So that's a big. I enjoy that time at least. Um,
better than Thursday night.
nobody, nobody's playing in that game. I mean, Minnesota is not going to play anybody. And certainly the Eagles aren't going to play anybody. So, from the standpoint of key contributors, obviously, somebody's got to play, unfortunately.
Yeah, hope nobody gets injured and the games move right along. That's August 24th. So August 15th today. So next preseason game is 9 days, and then September 6th right out there. So boy, things are moving along quickly, Johnny Mac. Where's your head on this football team, John, in terms of let's go defense first this morning? We got no guest in hour one. We'll have Brandon Lee Goutman, who is at the joint practice in hour number 2. So excited to talk to BLJ. I want to welcome everybody in this morning. Ted, Crowley, Shooter McGavin's in here. He's our resident Patriot fan, John.
Oh, sorry, Shooter.
Yeah, so
It's not going to be a good year for the Patriots.
Shooters does not agree with that. Shooter's pretty high on his Patriots. He thinks Drake May is a money pick. Shooter
Might be a money pick, but it's going to take a while.
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit. Twiz the Jig is in here. Eduardo's in here. All of our boys are in here. So and girls. So thank everybody for being here. Make sure you guys hit that like button this morning. I came close to pulling a Jody Mack this morning, but I am here, everybody. I am here. Johnny Mack,
under the weather too. He's fighting through it.
Fighting through it. We're battling, everybody. Where are we on defense, John, on this team? You know, I think people are confident in the offense. I think they're starting to really think that Kellen Moore is going to be the guy based on what we've seen in camp. I don't know if you can say the same on the defense, where you have those questions. We've talked about them, needing to get to the middle of the pack. Are you confident they can be a middle of the pack defense this year based on what you've seen so far through camp?
I think they can be. I'm very high on Vic Fangio and his ability to game plan on a week-to-week basis and try to take away what he needs to take away. Plus, he's in the moment. Tends to pull the right cards as a defensive coordinator, and he'll be able to get the team off the field on third down a lot better than his disciple Sean Desai, or certainly Matt Patricia did. That was the biggest problem for the Eagles defense. Couldn't get off the field. I think Vic is very good at manipulating things on, certainly third and long, but even third and intermediate, which was the big problem for the Eagles last season. So, but as far as the defense as a whole, and I think you saw it this week in the joint practice, Greg Bedard, I longtime Patriots reporter, I saw, used to work for Sports Illustrated, a bunch of different places. Now works for the Boston Sports Journal up there. He had the Eagles at 14 sacks officially in the practice. That's, speaking of our Patriots buddy, that ain't good for the Patriots, but I think it emphasizes the defensive front is the strength of this team, and as they go, so will the defense. So if they're having a good day, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the Eagles defense on a game-to-game basis. If they're not having a good day, I think you're going to go, oof, this is bad. That's kind of how I look at the defense.
You think they're going to add anybody, John? At whatever position. It could be any position. Just general feeling on where Howie is on the roster. Could he add somebody to the defensive side of the ball?
I don't think so. Now, when I say that, I assume you mean meaningful. Will he pick somebody up on waivers as a back of the roster?
Do you define Zach Cunningham as meaningful?
Yeah, that would be meaningful because he's a starter, or he was a starter here last year. That would be, maybe I'll say, somewhat meaningful, more out of desperation than anything else. I don't think you're going to see that this year. Again, that linebacker situation sort of it's turned on its top. Like I think they're fine with backup linebackers. I think they got to find starters. And on a good team, Zach Cunningham would be a backup. So they didn't even have good backup linebackers. That's why they were bringing in guys late in the process. I don't think they have to do that this year. If worse comes to worse, you just throw Jeremiah Trotter into the deep end and see what he can do as a rookie. And I think the more he continues to stack good days, the more likely that is at some point this season. And I think Nakobe's going to lock down one of the jobs. It's trending in that direction. I never wavered from that. And he's got the biggest upside of the group still. He's stayed healthy so far. So it's not great, but I think they're not going outside the organization. Certainly, they're far deeper at corner. A lot of it young, most of it young, most of it unproven. But you see the talent level, so he's not going out there. Safety, they just brought in Caden Stearns. We'll see who he is. We'll see where he is health-wise. They're not going out and getting Justin Simmons unless there's an significant injury, because he's injured right now. Significant injury to CJ or Reed Blankenship. So that's the door to that avenue. And he's been taking visits now to the Saints and Falcons. So the urgency's picked up if you want to go that route. And the Eagles have shown no indication they want to go that route. So I would say no. The most likely place is wide receiver 3 to go outside the organization.
And that's on the offensive side of the ball. The one side that we don't have many questions other than really the wide receiver 3. I guess you could throw a right guard in there. But so interesting stuff there. John, I want to ask you about a couple of specific players and what you've seen from them so far in camp. I'll start with the rookie, Jalix Hunt. They drafted him, John, in the 3rd round as a developmental guy. Many were upset because they thought that's too high for a developmental type of player. What have you seen so far from him in camp? Overall, it seems like he's been better than people expected him to be, but he is a 3rd-round draft pick. What have you seen so far from Jalix Hunt?
Yeah, as advertised. I mean, he's a raw prospect with a lot of nice natural traits, and that's what most people thought he was coming in. Is he ready to play? Probably not. If you see, Vic Fangio's descriptions, certainly not major snaps. Now, could he be a natural pass rusher? I've talked about that in the past. Sure. And you could use him in those 3rd and 13 situations, maybe as a one-trick pony, as sort of Bryce Huff was with the Jets, and say, all right, well, he can go straight ahead. And Vic has a history of utilizing players like that, where he'll hide their deficiencies and try to make out what they do best right now. He's kind of talked about that with Nolan Smith as well, to a larger extent, because Nolan's got to play more. But yeah, I mean, it was a long-term developmental prospect, at least for turning into a 3-down edge rusher. And that's where I think the Eagles are. I don't have a problem with it. Taking it at that point in the draft, I think it's fine. I think how the board fell, I would have went the Peyton Wilson direction if my medical staff allowed me to, which is a big hurdle. And if they don't, they don't. Then there's nothing you can do. But I think that would be a day 1 starter for the Eagles at linebacker. So from me, that standpoint would be more exciting, but they don't, let's face it, Howie doesn't show tremendous interest in that particular position. So it's understandable. And he values edge rushers tremendously.
Yeah, a couple other people were clamoring for the guy that they passed on for Cooper DeJean. I can't think of his name. Is it Edgerrin Cooper, the Texas A&M player? A lot of people in the chat when Cooper was out were we should have drafted him, but it's true. I mean,
Well, they're
we
definitely
have
not drafting
no, they're not. I'm not saying
yeah.
they would ever do that, but when you look at the roster and you look at, you should never draft for need, is what they say. But boy, this team could use some linebackers.
That's the Brian Billick. Need is the worst talent evaluator in sports. One of the great quotes. He's not the person to say it, but he was the person to say it to me. So I give him credit for that. But yeah, you can't pick for need. And I think the Eagles fans, I haven't seen him yet, but they'll get to see him pretty quickly. I think they're going to be very happy with Cooper DeJean. I think he's got, that's a first round pick who fell to the second round because he fractured his fibula. So, you're getting a first round talent at 40th overall. That's pretty good value. We'll see if he can stay healthy. If he does, he can play anywhere. They think he can play slot. They think he can play corner. They think he can play safety. They think he can play dime linebacker.
Right.
So, I think about, and he's got a high football IQ. He's a tremendous athlete. I don't think you're going to fail with the off the field stuff when it comes to work ethic and things like that. So if he's able to right the ship when it comes to injuries and stay on the field, I think Eagles fans are going to be very happy with him sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we'll see what he's able to do. We're going to get to our first commercial break, and then we're going to dive into our preview of the game. I know it's not an exciting game, as we pointed out in the open of the show. Probably not many people will play tonight, but there are guys that are going to play. So where should we watch? Who are we watching? Who are the best guys to look for? I think a guy we just mentioned, Jalix Hunt, I'm going to be watching him tonight. So we'll do a preview of the game coming up next year on Birds 365. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning, bearing with me. I'm a little under the weather, but I'm getting through it, everybody. So we appreciate all you guys being here. Hit that like button. Johnny Mac and I will be back in 3 minutes on the other side.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to the Birds 365, a game day edition of Birds 365. Eagles taking on the Patriots tonight for preseason game number 2. Johnny Mack and I will preview that game right now. John, what's your expectations of the game tonight? We'll get into some individual players we're watching, but overall, what's your expectation of the game tonight?
I never have expectations of a preseason game.
Not in preseason.
Because, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and you're not dealing with the key contributors and the key players. So, but, you know, for the sickos that do like to bet preseason games, make sure you do it at BetUS. So I will say that. But there's never any expectations. Just, you know, guys trying to better their stuff around on film. So whether it's the Eagles or somebody else around the NFL might try to take a flyer on them, might try to advance their career. So that's what preseason football is about. It's about those guys, especially now in the modern environment. And I did my 5 players that have a chance to improve their standing. So I'll go with those guys. Number 1 would be Marlon Tuipulotu, which I think started in the practice. He was one of the guys. Well, everybody. I mean, I just told you with Greg Bedard with the 14 sacks. I mean, everybody was having a big day on the Eagles defensive front. But I thought it was notable when Vic was asked about the backup nose tackle position last week, or it was actually over the weekend. He didn't mention Marlon, who in theory is the backup to Jordan Davis. He even said, well, maybe we'll have to play Milton Williams some snaps there, which Milton is not a nose tackle. And when he was given that information, he kind of went, really? So Marlon has a chance, bigger body, you know, continue to play well, continue to stack those good days, and get back into that conversation, since I think he's the most obvious nose tackle backup on this team. Tyler Steen is another. The one thing, if you call across the reports, and we'll talk to BLG about this in hour 2, because he was there. The one issue with the Eagles offense was the interior of the offensive line. And it was usually, when people were talking about it, was usually 77, Mekhi Becton. I think it's way too early to assume somebody that size can excel at right guard inside rather than outside a tackle. So I think there's still an opportunity for Tyler Steen to continue to play well. The problem is he keeps limping. So I don't think he's 100%. He's out there because he knew he had to get back out there. And I'm a little surprised the Eagles have gone down that route, but it is what it is. And he'll need to be a reserve even if he doesn't get back in the right guard conversation. That means he's going to have to start taking tackle reps, which Nick Sirianni said. And I think he's more comfortable with that. So he's a guy. And then when you start getting further down, JAKIB Harris is one. He's one of the wide receivers, the back end wide receivers. I've talked about him a couple times. He's 6'5", but he runs a 4.39. He's really fast. So he's a big deal on special teams. And Michael Clay's been using him as a gunner, and he's been using him on kickoff coverage now that Grant Calcaterra's hurt. So if he can make a play at wide receiver or 2, and I always talk about Eli Ricks in Baltimore, you know, he can get in that conversation to be on the back end of this roster, because nobody's standing out, whether it's when you talk about that outside backup position. Ultimately, I do think the Eagles are going to go outside the organization and get somebody. But if they don't, why not JAKIB Harris? But he's got to make some plays. And then Tristan McMullen for the same reason at safety. He had a good preseason opener at Baltimore. And if he continues to play well and the Eagles move on from James Bradbury, they play it cautious with Sidney Brown to start the season. They play it cautious with Caden Stearns to start the season. He's got a chance to sneak on that 53-man roster as well. But the centerpiece for me, and I left him for last, is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. because he's going to play. And I think he can get meaningful snaps on this team very, very early. If he finishes strongly this camp, and that means play well tonight, that means continue to play well in practice, that means he'll play against Minnesota because he has to as a backup. The more he plays well, the more there's a chance that he gets on the field because of what's going on at the linebacker position.
Yeah, no doubt. He's definitely one of the guys in the sights tonight. I think you think he'll play a lot, John? I mean, how much do you think he will play tonight?
I think he played 19. No, he played 29. He played 29 reps against Baltimore. I think he'll be over 20 again. So plenty of time to show what he can do. And that's a good thing. The more Vic gets to see him, the more he plays well. Now he's got to play well. That's part of it as well. If he plays poorly, that's going to put him back at the, back of the line, and he'll say, all right, he's a rookie. He's not going to get cut. He's going to make the team, but he needs more time. But if he continues to play well, and there's a perfect opportunity because that Patriots team is not great. They're going to be open to the idea of him getting more and more snaps.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing with him tonight. I think he's going to be a guy that's out there a lot. A couple other guys I'm looking at. I thought yours were pretty good. Marlon was a good one too. I would add Moro Jomo. I don't know how much he'll play tonight, but I would add him as another guy. You've heard a lot of people talk about we need more depth at defensive tackle. Well, right now it's Tui Pelotu and Jomo, right? Those are your two main depth guys at that position. So I think I'm looking for him to see if he can do something. I'm looking for Jalix Hunt tonight. I want to see what Jalix Hunt can do. And that's really it. I mean, maybe a couple of other guys. And John, our guy Johnny Wilson, how much will he play tonight?
Yeah, he's going to play a ton as well. And I'm not as high on Johnny Wilson as other people. But yeah, I mean, he's a young player. He's going to play. That's why I don't think he's relevant. Other than what I sort of said about Jalix Hunt on the defensive side, he might be somebody you use in the red zone. He might be somebody you use very situationally. But the reason why I think they're going outside the organization at wide receiver 3 is not because they need somebody to play when AJ and Devontae are out there. It's because if those guys get hurt and miss a game or two, you need somebody to be able to play 60, 70 snaps and at least be competent. And they don't have that right now outside the numbers. So I think it's more about that. It's more about being the backup outside than being the slot receiver. I think they could piecemeal it together with the slot with a bunch of different guys. And it's not a high traffic position anyway. So I'm not as concerned with that, but you do need some better depth with the outside receivers.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing with all those. Ask people in the chat, John, the one guy I do think that will play tonight, I don't know how much, would be Nakobe Dean. How much do you think he'll play tonight?
That's interesting because they made the move on Tuesday.
Yeah, to put him at first team.
Yeah. I think he'll play. He played 19 snaps in the opener. I don't think he'll play that much. But I think he'll play a little bit. And he needs to continue to play well. It's not like that has been decided or he's going to be the starter week 1. I only think he's going to be the starter week 1 because he's the Eagles' best linebacker. So not that He's not that he's Fred Warner, but he's the Eagles' best linebacker. So as long as he's healthy, he'll show that over the snaps he does get, and I believe he'll be out there against the Packers. But I do expect him to play some, not a ton. And he's no longer a deference player as he once was with this team. But a lot of the defenders, you would think Jalen Carter's a deference player, but he played last week. Vic's a little bit
I would
different.
feel no need to get him out there tonight.
Well, I agree, but Vic's a little bit different. So you can't just assume. Ultimately, I think they'll convince him, look, it's not worth it. Series, you got to see him for a series. That was this whole thing. Players don't like to show up week one and not play and have that be their first rep of the season. All right, well, you got that over with in Baltimore. There's no reason to play Jalen Carter in the preseason games. But you got to convince Vic of that. I think they'll be able to do it. But, I leave the door slightly ajar to say he might play 4 snaps, 3 and out, and then be done.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing with him tonight. A lot of good. There still is some good players to watch, John. The other thing I'll be watching is the special teams. I think you turned out to be right on. You're gonna turn out to be right on this. It might be a bunch more touchbacks. Same thing. It's just everybody's lined up a little bit differently, and all the kickoff returns I've seen so far have been like to the 25 or 30. So not much add-on, but I will be watching that tonight. I think there's still something to learn from that with the NFL team. So I'll be interested.
Yeah, well,
but
the most interesting, they all act like, oh, we don't know. We don't want to show up the Eagles, especially because of their competitive advantage. And they all show up and they do the exact same thing. It's hilarious to me. Every team, they do the exact same thing. They have the dual returners. Wherever they kick the ball, the other one becomes the lead blocker. Every single one has done the same thing. And if you do have a good kick returner, Devin Hester's of the world, Cordero Patterson's of the world, and they break one, you're going to see touchback after touchback after touchback, and they'll give up. They'll trade. The only difference is touchback used to be at the 25. Now it's at the 30. So you're giving up 5 yards. Originally, when they proposed the rule, they were going to take it out to the 35, and that became problematic because they thought teams wouldn't pass it because they'd be concerned with losing that much field position. I think they'll give up 5 yards if it's Cordero Patterson out there. If it's Kenny Gainwell and Isaiah Rodgers, that's who the Eagles are using. They're not going to give up that field position unless they prove, unless you make them prove it. And if you do, they'll just kick it out. And you'll start at the 30.
Yeah, so we'll see what they'll able to, we'll see how they play that tonight, John. I did look at your preseason article tonight. By the way, the game tonight, we don't have Jeff Kerr here to give us the rundown on how to watch this thing.
It's not cozy. It's NBC 10.
It's NBC 10, and then I think it's NFL
about
Network
that.
if you're not in the area. I think that's the breakdown of it. So you don't have to worry about cozy TV for those who seek out.
Never have
cozy.
to worry about cozy TV again. I can't say that 100%. But
I'll tell you what, John. I was doing a live stream of the game on last Friday, I guess it was, and I'm watching, and there's a dude in the chat who's like 3 plays ahead or 2 plays ahead, and I'm like, man, where are you watching it? I'm watching it on the network television, and he's like, I'm on Cozy TV. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Cozy TV had the fastest feed of all of them last week.
Yeah,
So
well, that's the thing about watching on TV. It's usually on a delay, and some are more delayed than others. So you'll see that little bit of lag time. But yeah, I don't know I don't know anything. I still know nothing about Cozy TV.
Yeah, we don't know anything about Cozy TV. So I didn't watch it on there. But tonight it's on NBC 10 if you're in Philly, and it's on NFL Network. So you can be watching it on there, and we will see, what ends up happening tonight. How do you think the quarterbacks will go tonight, John? You think Kenny Pickett will play as much as he did in the first preseason game?
Yeah, I think Kenny will get the first half, and he came out for the third quarter. Yeah, maybe similar. you might even get to see some Will Greer tonight. I don't know if that's a positive. If they want to play Will Greer, maybe Kenny plays a quarter and a half, and they go to Tanner McKee, and then you finish it up with Will Greer, which is a possibility. I don't see the value in that when you're trying to develop. Tanner McKee is a developmental quarterback. Like, I want him out there in the preseason. That's his time to shine. And that's the way I'd go about it. But, Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier like Will Greer a lot. He's followed them. I think he's going to be a future coach. And they might want to get him some time. But, when you have a young quarterback like Tanner McKee, I want to get him as many live reps as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he's got the big arm, so maybe they'll try and push that ball down the field with not a big arm, but he does have a nice arm.
They didn't do it. That's one thing I'll be paying attention. They didn't do it last week, so let's see if they do it this week. And maybe
I'd like to see him get some reps with the twos last week. I mean, he had a lot of drops, and I didn't think that they did him justice having him out there with all the third and
that's the thing. People.
What are you gonna
do? That's who you're out there with, and Kenny as well. I mean, he's not out there with the key players either. So, one of the things I talk about a lot is second team reps in the NFL. Forget about games and practice. They tend to shift towards the defense for the reason that defensive line is a rotational position in most cities, and most players, certain guys play all the time. Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, those guys, but very rare. And so most teams have a bunch of defensive front players that can play. And offensive line is, if you're healthy, you're playing all 5 positions. That's not rotational. So the backups don't play a lot, and they tend to struggle against guys who do play. So second team reps can be difficult to evaluate, and people get too much on the backup quarterbacks who are playing in some sticky situations. In other words, Kenny Pickett with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert is going to be better than Kenny Pickett with insert names. And I think a lot of people kind of missed that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. John, another guy I want to ask about tonight, which will be interesting because of the changes from last week, is Zach Baun. Last week, Zach Baun played a series or two, and then he was laughing it up with the starters on the sidelines. Is he a guy that's going to play more tonight because maybe he slipped on the depth chart? Maybe Nakobe Dean's right there. Maybe Trotter Jr. is pushing him to be the third linebacker, and Zach Baun could be in danger of falling to fourth on the totem pole for off-ball linebacker. What do you expect to see from Zach Baun tonight?
I don't expect to see a ton because I think he's still in Vic's mind as a guy who's going to play, whether he's a starter or not. And I've always thought that he would play the Andrew Van Ginkel role that he had in Miami, where you're a hybrid player, essentially, part edge rusher, part off-ball linebacker. Now, Van Ginkel did it at a very high level, and I don't know. I think it's very unlikely that Zach's going to be that good, but I think that's his role. I think he wants that player, that type of player, and I think that's going to be Zach Baun's role to utilize. So I still think he's part of the plan from Vic Fangio's perspective. I think it just changes a little bit, and I don't think he's going to play 40 snaps because he's not the starter anymore. I think he's still – everything's going to be very situational with this team in the back seven, depending on the opponent, depending on the situation. Is it 3rd and 13? Is it 3rd and 2? Everything's going to be very situational, except with the defensive front. Everywhere else, you're going to see moving parts. You might see one linebacker on the field. You might see a bunch of defensive backs. You might see an extra flat defender, Zach Baun. It's going to be very mix and match in the back seven from week to week.
Yeah, so we'll see what they end up doing there, John. Any other players right now that are going to be a point of emphasis to watch tonight? It is tough. I mean, even the guys you want to watch, it's like, if they're playing versus the second and third string teams of the Patriots, how good is the competition? But they are all NFL guys. I try not to put too much stock in that. If they play good, they play good, and if they don't, they don't, and take it for what it's worth and keep moving forward. But any other players right now, John, that are sticking out that you want to watch tonight? Maybe some back end roster guys, maybe some guys that are on the bubble trying to get to that 100%.
Well, and I would say when you talk about the best NFL team versus the worst NFL team, I actually think it's far more. There's more parity on the back end of the roster. In other words, the difference tends to be with that first 15 guys, your first 15 players, the stars or the key contributors. Those are, the Eagles' stars are much better than the Patriots, to put it mildly. But when you get to 16 to 53, NFL is like dead even from roster to roster to roster. So yeah. That I don't believe there's a huge difference between the Patriots and the Eagles from that perspective. And guys, I said it week one. Here we are again, week 2 in the preseason. Ainias Smith, make a damn play. Change the narrative. All it took was Eli Ricks to make one play in Baltimore to change the narrative. If Howie Roseman thinks somebody will say, let's say our buddy James Carver's a GM out there and, he returns a punt for a touchdown. That's it. He's going to keep him because he's going to be worried that somebody's going to claim him on waivers. And you can piecemeal it in a different way now with all the liberalized roster rules. You can say, well, John Ross is going to play. Let's pretend they don't go outside the organization. And let's say AJ sprains an ankle. Well, Ainias Smith ain't playing. Johnny Wilson ain't playing. But you got to keep them because they got to go through waivers. And then maybe you have John Ross, you wink it as a vested guy and say, hey, we're going to put you on the practice squad, and then we're going to elevate you to play the game. So it's a lot. You can do a lot more like that. It's less fun, by the way, when it comes to building rosters because it's much easier. But I digress. So there's a lot of different ways you can go, but he's got to make a damn play, Ainias Smith. Like if he doesn't do anything for the rest of the summer, he's done. He's cut. But Eli Ricks has proven if you do something in front of the camera, they will keep you. If they think there's any chance that somebody's going to claim you on waivers.
Yeah, because that's what plays into it most parts of doing it on camera is that everybody else will get you, and once somebody else wants you, you become more valuable where you are. So, look, I don't know. You think Ainias will play a lot of receiver tonight, or is he mostly going to be on the kick returns? And I mean, he's got to make a play, I think, on in the slot or something.
No, yeah, he's going to play a ton at receiver, and yeah, he's got to do something, and it can't be any more drops. That's got to stop. And it's, again, we'll see if they try to push the football down the field a little bit more. And he gets that opportunity, but if he's out there, for him specifically, he's got to make a play.
We'll see if he's able to do that. John, we'll take another commercial break, and then we'll have one more segment to go before we get to Brandon Lee Gouton. VLG was at the joint practice, by the way, in New England. So we'll get a guy from the practice. So let's see what he got, what he saw from the joint practice, see what he took away from that. We'll get to our next commercial break. I want to thank everybody in the chat for being here. Appreciate all you guys. Make sure you hit that like button. I don't know what we're up to right now, but over 300 watching on YouTube. So pretty good numbers this morning. It's game day, everybody. It's a football Thursday, so stay tuned. Birds 365. We'll be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to the Birds 365. 50 minutes into the show here. Game day edition, by the way, of Birds 365. Eagles take on the Patriots tonight for preseason game number 2. So we'll be following along all that. We'll have some shows tonight for you, recapping the game and seeing what we got to take away. John, you will not be down there, so we'll probably do a quick 24/7, 30-minute 24/7 after the game airs tonight. I probably will not be doing the live stream during the game tonight. Going to rest up the voice and get going after, and then we'll be back in the morning to break it all down. So good stuff, everybody. It is game day, which, look, anytime you get the Eagles on the field in the Eagles jerseys and they're playing against another team, I think it's a fun day. It's better than a day where that's not happening. So take it for what it's worth. But we'll be following along all night long on that. So good stuff there. Let's go to our super chat. D Love drops a super chat. Thank you, D Love. I appreciate everybody being here. D Love says, I really like running back Davis Price. He's someone that's different from the other backs. Can you tell us more about him? Chance how he keeps 4 backs. D Love, this is a good question for Johnny Mack. He knows about Ty Davis Price. John, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, Ty was a 3rd-round pick of the 49ers a couple years ago, 2022, I believe. So, very similar to Trey Sermon, who was a 3rd-round pick of the 49ers that the Eagles tried to pick up. And Trey's still in the league with our buddy Shane Steichen in Indianapolis. But, one thing that concerned me, same thing that concerned me, is the 49ers run the football really well. And if they're drafting a guy in the 3rd round, why are they giving up on him so quickly? So that concerns me. Same thing that concerned me with Trey Sermon. They all look good. They have that second group of running backs. You got the guys who were no doubters that are going to make the team: Saquon, Kenny Gainwell, Will Shipley. And then you have Ty, you have Lou Nichols, and you have Kendall Milton, who's an undrafted rookie from Georgia. And they're all big backs. They're all offer something a little bit different than what the Eagles have. with the redundancy of the 3 down back, so to speak. Saquon's got size, but you don't think of him as a north-south runner. So that's what the Eagles are trying to get with one of the 3. They all played well in Baltimore. Everybody played well at running back. Everybody who played. Saquon didn't play. Kenny started, was good. Will was good. Lou Nichols was good. Ty was good. And Kendall Milton closed the game. So that was also a testament to the Eagles' backup offensive line as well. But you saw some of their abilities. Now, Nick raved about Lou Nichols. I asked him that after the game. I asked him about those 3 backs. So
yeah, I thought Lou looked pretty good in that first preseason game.
Yeah, in the default setting, Nick seems to be high, and Lou's been here the longest. He was here last year, led the nation in rushing 1 year in college. So Nick seems to be most high on him.
Where did he play college ball?
Central Michigan, I believe. And Ty played at LSU, Kendall. So they're more familiar to college football fans. Although, as I said, Lou led the nation in rushing.
Yeah, Central Michigan. You're right about that.
His junior year, he led the entire nation in rushing. But Nick seems very high on him. But I say it's Howie's decision. Ultimately, I don't think they're keeping 4 backs on the 53. So they're battling for the practice squad spot. I don't think they'll keep 2. They'll probably keep 1. And if you listen to Nick, it's going to be Lou Nichols. If you're a betting man and knowing Howie as I do, it's probably going to be Kendall Milton. So I don't know if Ty's going to make the team, but they all look like NFL running backs. And if he plays well tonight, going to get plenty of action, and those other guys don't, that could shift things. So that could be in the conversation. But he was one of those future contract guys that Howie talked about in the spring. He didn't think it would be a strong undrafted free agency year. So he went out and plucked guys off other practice squads, and Ty Davis Price is one of those guys.
Yeah, we'll see how he does tonight. A lot of fans, John, like that Kendall Milton out of Georgia. He's that big body back. He's different than what we have. Did you mention you think he's the guy that they would keep in that 4th hole?
I think Howie, knowing him with the undrafted stuff, it'd be more likely. I think Nick likes Lou first and foremost, but they all played well. But I do not think they will keep 4 backs on the initial 53. I do not, because you can manipulate things to. I don't think they're going to be concerned about losing any of them on waivers, so you can manipulate it that way. And if you need them, you just put them on the practice squad and elevate them. You have 3 elevations, and then of course, if somebody gets hurt, you just sign them to the 53.
Yeah, so we'll see what they end up doing at that position. D-Love, thanks for the question, man. Good stuff there. Good stuff to get an update on a guy like Ty Davis Price. I think we'll see a lot of him tonight. Lou Nichols was a guy, he did impress me in his game last week. Not impress me, but I thought he looked solid. And it's good to hear you say that they have good. Yeah, they all look good. Right. They all look like NFL running backs, which is good. So we'll see who they end up keeping at that position. John, what about wide receivers tonight? I mean, we already talked a little bit about Anais Smith.
I should mention real quick, I forgot. The one thing with Ty, he's really struggled catching the football in practice. So that's a big part of it for the Eagles, obviously, with Saquon and Kenny and Will Shipley. They all have that ability to catch the football. They've thrown it to him a lot. They've given him a lot of opportunities, and he doesn't seem like the most natural catcher of the football. So I think that hurts him a little bit. Kendall Milton didn't do it at all at Georgia, and he looks more natural, at least catching.
Wow, that's because he doesn't. I mean, when you see him, he wouldn't strike you as a
no. Well, and he's not. I'm not. Again, he's not Kenny Gainwell. He's not. He's not a good receiver, but he seems if the ball is there and he's going to catch it. He's not going to make catches on wheel routes down the field, but they threw it to him in the flat a couple times, and he Ty's got a lot of drops, and that'll hurt him as well a little bit, I think.
Yeah, so we'll see what they end up doing there. John, I was about to ask you about wide receiver, and I see our people in the chat talking about our buddy Jody Mack's favorite, Greg Ward, got picked up by the Colts by Shane Steichen. All this talk about wide receiver 3, John. I mean, I think Greg would have been an all right option. At least
there are certain guys. I used to get in this with Jody all the time.
I know.
Greg is a great guy. Might be a future coach, former quarterback. They were always looking to replace him. Always. Just doesn't have the speed to be a difference maker in the NFL. It's tremendous. He's still hanging around. But yeah, he's not the answer in the slot. And yeah, there's certain guy, Crevan LeBlanc, Greg Ward, Eagles fans love him. Yeah, you needed to get better. They are better.
John is not willing to revisit the Greg Ward.
They're still not good enough.
John is not willing to revisit the Greg Ward to Philly hype train.
No, no. Well, it doesn't matter what I'm willing to revisit. The Eagles are not willing to revisit the Greg Ward to Philadelphia.
Good stuff there, John.
Certainly not as a meaningful. Like, people got him being the third receiver. I'm like, come on, no, not going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see who ends up being the third receiver. Speaking of it, John, who will play tonight at receiver? Who will get the majority of reps? Will it be Johnny Wilson, or will he start to get treatment get him out after the first quarter or first 2 quarters?
What? No.
So nobody after AJ and Devontae are going to be
Johnny Wilson. Johnny Wilson's going to play. I mentioned Jacob Harris is going to play. But they're going to start Johnny Wilson, John Ross probably, and Britton Covey. And then everybody will mix in from there. The Jacob Harrises of the world, the Austin Watkins of the world. No. I mean, Johnny Wilson needs reps. And no, he's not going to be a deference player. No, absolutely not. Anaya Smith has got to play, obviously, as we talked about. Now, look, Johnny's going to make the team, but boy, people are skipping steps with him. I mean, he's got a lot of work to do, and he's not ready to play major snaps. Again, if AJ or Devontae sprain an ankle, he's not ready to play major snaps, and he's a work in progress, as he should be for a 6th-round pick. I mean, you can default to Puka Nacua as a 5th rounder and say, well, Puka did it. Yeah, but all right, now add up all the other 5th and 6th and 7th round picks and see what they did in their rookie seasons, and then play out your odds of that happening. So, I mean, people got to slow the train on Johnny Wilson. That poor guy's, there's way too much expectations on him.
Let's temper those expectations, me included, on Johnny Wilson. John, let's talk about offensive line. I mean, I think Tyler Steen is interesting because if he slipped at that right guard position and it's now Becton's job to lose, does Tyler Steen get a lot of reps tonight?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be and part of it is, again, he's still limping, so I don't know where they are medically, but obviously they've let him on the field to try to fight for his starting job. Obviously, he's going to make the team. And Nick already mentioned the other day that if he's going to be a backup, he's got to start taking tackle reps as well. So you might see him at right guard and tackle to get him ready to be a game day backup. But boy, I didn't see good reports. About the only thing you could call and we'll get a better indication from BLG when he gets here. About the only thing people said negatively was the Eagles' interior line struggled a little bit, and it was usually Becton against the Patriots. So, I mean, tells you that the Eagles don't have a lot of confidence in Tyler Steen right now to be the starter either. But I don't think it'll be that bad because the other four are that good. But I do think it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think I was talking about this on the National Football Show. I do think when you go up against a veteran interior defensive lineman and they get a guy like Mekhi Becton, it's not about the power. It's not even about the skill.
Nope.
It's about the
Leverage.
experience, right? The leverage, and they get him off balance or whatever. You saw Jalen Carter move him out of the way with one arm. I mean, you get against those guys. That's where I think Becton could be a problem, and really probably not to a fault of his own. He just never played or guard in his life. He's a big boy. He's played tackle. So, you're going to go up against veteran guys in the middle. And, if Fletcher Cox went against him or Jalen Carter, and then they're obviously Eagles, Fletcher not anymore. But, I think they would have a field day. Not a field day, but I think they would get around him a couple times and create some pressure. And that would be my fear with Mekhi Becton at the guard spot.
Yeah, 6'8" guys don't play guard for a reason. It's not, you don't see a lot of them. And that's part of the issue is you got to get low and you got to get your pads low. And it's not easy for a 6'8" guy to get his pads low. So he does have a lot of talent, obviously, a lot of gifts when he gets his hands on people. He can push him back. He can use his power. Stoutland's always liked, especially when Jason Kelce was here. He always wanted those big, powerful guards to make up for Kelce's lack of size a little bit to try to help him out from that perspective. And it worked with Brandon Brooks, most notably. But, Brandon was big, but he wasn't that big. And the same thing with Landon Dickerson. He's big, but boy, and on paper you say, well, what's the difference between 6'6"? That's what Landon's listed as, and Mekhi Becton at almost 6'8". Well, I don't know, but I get to see them both at practice every stinking day, and Mekhi looks a hell of a lot bigger than Landon Dickerson.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing there. I mean, I think it's going to be Mekhi, but when you start to think about life in a year from now, which I guess we're not ready to go there. I'm just saying, if he plays good, do the Eagles lock him up as a guard? Do they let him hit the free market and a team pays him like a tackle and he goes back to tackle? Do the Eagles try and slot in Trevor Keegan? Like, players don't swing from guard to tackle often. Where it's like, oh, he played great at guard, so we can sign him and he'll be able to play tackle too if we need it. It doesn't really go that way. You don't see great tackles playing guard, so that's where I'm like, I don't know if he plays great at guard. Would the Eagles pay him as a guard and keep him there, give him the $20 million or whatever it would be, and $16 million or $17 million and keep him as a guard?
I mean, they're not thinking about that right now, but there are guys. I mean, I firmly believe if Troy Fautano lasted to the Eagles at 22, he'd be here and he'd be the starting right guard. And ultimately, the plan would be down the road whenever Lane Johnson retires, he would move out to right tackle. Now, if you go all the way back to when Lane was drafted, for those who forget, Lane was drafted to be the heir apparent to Jason Peters. He was going to start at right tackle and ultimately move over to left tackle. And then Jason, which was his natural position in college, and then Jason kept playing and playing and playing. And he got so good at right tackle, at some point, Jeff Stoutland said, we're not moving him. So you don't have to make those decisions now. They're not making those decisions now. It's a long way to assume that Mekhi Becton's going to turn into a $16, $20 million player. But if you're thinking about it logically, that's a better chance to happen for him at tackle than guard. So that kind of stuff tends to take care of itself. If he plays well, they'll figure it out. The Eagles will pay good players. They've proven that. If he doesn't play well, if he's average, then you start thinking about the next step and what that's going to be, whether it's Keegan or, maybe a high draft pick next year, because the Eagles are always, if there's an offensive lineman they like coming out in the draft, they're going to take him. First round, second round, third round, they're going to take him. So, yeah, they don't have to make that decision now. They're trying to figure out who the best right guard is for this season right now.
We'll see what they end up doing there. Let's go to our super chat, John. Opening back up this can of worms. If Eagles doesn't throw deep balls tonight, I'm concerned. Angel Martinez.
People got mad at me. People got
people did get mad at you yesterday. They were mad at me.
I don't know. And people don't listen. But it's not that I'm concerned. I haven't marked. I haven't done it a lot. And maybe they're just working on what they didn't do well last year, which would be a positive, as long as you integrate those shots down the field back into the offense when you need to integrate them back into the offense. Are they going to do it with Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee? Well, they didn't do it last week. That's part of my concern. Nobody seemed to hear that. Jalen Hurts isn't even on the field. They're so focused on anybody saying something that isn't 100% positive about the precious quarterback. And by the way, he can handle it. He's fine. He's got no issues with constructive criticism of himself or the offense. My whole point was he didn't even play in Baltimore, and they weren't pushing the football down the field at all. And is that the default setting of Kellen Moore? Because you're not game planning. Yeah, I don't know. Angel, I appreciate the super chat. I'm disappointed I have to go down this route again, because I'm going to say it again and nobody's going to listen to it again. You don't game plan in the preseason. They're not worrying about beating the New England Patriots this week. So it tends to be, when you're a play caller offensively or defensively, you're just going to default to what you like to do. And at Kellen Moore's default setting is 2.3 seconds, which he said, underneath, get the football out of your hands. I think it's something to watch, something to be cognizant of. Put an asterisk next to it. And if he comes out today and he throws a deep shot, 40 yards, even if it's incomplete, to John Ross, I feel better, because it seems like he's willing to do it. And again, Jalen Hurts is not even on the field. So it has more to do with Kellen Moore than Jalen Hurts, if you're so concerned about the delicate balance of the quarterback, who doesn't care, by the way. And it's not.
I think there's too much emphasis though on that big play. I mean, look, is it about big plays or is it about high percentage plays?
They fell in love with the big play. So that's what you're trying, but you need a balance. And I'm not saying it's easy, but the minute, and I use Jacob Harris as an example in Baltimore with backup players again, Jacob's a long shot to make the team, but he runs a 4.39. He's very fast. And the Baltimore corners were jumping every route he ran because they knew he wasn't going to run behind him. That's the concern. If there is I don't even call it, that's a bad word. It's just something to keep an eye on.
No, you're right. It makes complete sense. I just wonder if, the high percentage plays are a better recipe for success. But I see what you're saying. If you become predictable in that regard too, the defense is going to be easier to shut down. So you can't remove it all, but I don't anticipate they will when you have guys like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. But we will see. John, we have about 6 or 7 minutes to go before we get up Brandon Lee Gowton to break down what he saw at joint practice and preview the game. Any other previews, any other things, any other players, position groups, anything you're thinking about as we prepare for tonight's preseason game?
I did say somebody mentioned cornerback too, and it's pretty clear that Isaiah Rodgers is going to be the starting cornerback opposite Darius Slay. When the Eagles are in nickel, Quinyon will play a nickel. When there's only 2 cornerbacks on the field, Quinyon will play outside and then he'll move inside. But obviously in the modern game, you have 3 cornerbacks on the field more than 2. So from that standpoint, he seems to be ahead of Kelee Ringo. I think it's 9 consecutive practices now, maybe 8, 9 overall, that Rodgers has taken the first team rep at right corner. Now, the one, how quickly does Cooper DeJean get into the mix? Because he could change more than anything else. He could change that. He's not playing outside. He's going to get reps outside in practice, but it's going to be the butterfly effect of him playing in the slot that kicks Quinyon Mitchell back outside full time. That's where the Eagles are going. So Cooper's not playing tonight, but he's getting closer. He did individual drills in practice. And that part of it is a big positive, because ultimately, whether it's week 3, week 4, week 8, week 10, which I hope it isn't for the Eagles' sake, I think they're trying to get to Cooper in the slot and Quinyon outside.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing at that position tonight. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. 5 minutes before we get our friend BLG tonight. Any bold prediction for the game? Not score or anything, but a player. Maybe a player makes a play.
Well, I'll let BLG, because he said the best thing, which was, I don't know what it is, but get on Bet US and bet the under on the Patriots win total. That's my bold prediction. That's his, though. I stole it from him.
I like it, though. That's good stuff. We'll use Bet US and we'll go over there and do that. We'll get to our next commercial break. Brandon Lee Gowton coming up soon. Here on Birds 365. So good stuff. Looking forward to talking to BLG. John, it's been a couple weeks, I think, because of the practices and everything. So our normal Wednesday spot we have not had. So looking forward to talking to BLG.
Oh, by the way, breaking news, the Giants released Jalen Mills.
Oh, I saw the people in the chat talking about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, no, they're not bringing him back. But Jalen's a great dude.
John answers it before we could even ask everybody. Is Jalen Mills coming back? Nope. Johnny Mac says no. So we'll see what happens to him. I like Jalen Mills, John.
I love him.
Mills. Yeah, I was
great dude.
I was a big Jalen Mills.
Yeah, but the Eagles are deep now. And Jalen's got versatility, can play corner safety. But he was out with a calf strain, ironically. So he's not even healthy to a certain extent as well. But the Eagles have a lot of bodies in the secondary.
Yeah, too many bodies. So we'll see, what ends up happening with all those bodies. I want to thank everybody for being here. Appreciate all of you guys. Hit that like button. Birds 365 will be right back with Brandon Lee Gowton.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Birds 365, a Thursday edition, joined now by Brandon Lee Gouton of Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, good to see you, man. Haven't talked to you in a couple of weeks with all the practices and everything going on. How you been, BLG?
Doing good. Obviously, like you said, been busy, but it's always good to have actual football things to talk about.
I agree.
Yeah, and I'm glad we have you since you made that trek, which I was not going to do. So props to you, and I've already given you credit. I noticed you mentioned, I believe, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know what the Patriots over-under is on wins, but bet the under. How much can you value if they're that bad, BLG, what you saw?
Yeah, I think I found out it's like 4.5, so it is a pretty low number, but still, I mean, that team's
tough to go under on, though.
Yeah, it is, but that team's quarterback situation is just based on what I saw out of practice. And look, give the Eagles credit for their defense making plays, and I thought they did that. It wasn't just about the Patriots quarterbacks, Jacoby Brissett mainly going against the Eagles starters, messing up, but there were mistakes, and the Eagles defense was able to take advantage of those.
Yeah, one thing, Greg Bedard, I don't know if you know, but he's a Patriots beat guy, longtime Patriots beat guy, works for the Boston Sports Journal, had the number at 14 for Eagles sacks. And one thing I've said pretty consistently on the show, BLG, I wasn't that concerned about. A lot of people said, well, Bryce Huff isn't showing up. I'm like, he's got to go against Lane every week, every day, and Jordan Mailata every day. And when you start getting to these average teams with average offensive lines or below average offensive lines, I think that Eagles defensive front is going to show up. It seems like they showed up in a big way against a poor offensive line.
Yeah, when it comes to Huff, I've been saying that I don't really recall Hassan Reddick, who I think is great, probably better than a lot of people do. Maybe he never really crushed it, I would say, in practice. So I wasn't too concerned about the Bryce Huff thing. I mean, I get it from the standpoint, though, of this is your top free agent signing, literally the first guy they signed. So you kind of want to see more than nothing. But like you said, John, I mean, that's the point of these joint training camp practices. You kind of start to get a better feel for things. And it's not just, well, hey, the Eagles defense hasn't gotten an interception. Is that a concern, or is it really great that Jalen Hurts hasn't thrown one? So we saw, Bryce Huff, and really, I mean, just the Eagles defensive line as a whole. I mean, you talked about that number 14.5 or whatever it was. I mean, it was basically everyone getting pressure.
BLG, good stuff there from the defensive line. What did you see from Jalen Hurts in the joint practice? And the reason I emphasize him is, he's playing his own defense every week, so he has no interceptions. He looks great. Okay, now we got a chance to see another defense. Whether they're great or not is up for debate. But how did Jalen Hurts look in the joint practice versus New England?
Yeah, I think the Patriots' offense is not in really a good state, but the defense is solid. I think they're going to have a solid
defense. Is okay, right?
Yeah, it's not. I don't think amazing, but I think it's credible.
Although now they lost Judon, but he was there.
It's solid. Yeah, that is true. Although he gave up a big play to Saquon Barkley, on a wheel route at one point. Certainly, not what you expecting him to do in his strong suit. But I thought the offense and Jalen Hurts specifically has continued to be efficient, and as I said, hasn't turned the ball over. Hasn't really put the ball in harm's way. I think one of the things that really stood out to me, and I had tweeted about this, was just how I feel like it's kind of hard to gauge. It's more anecdotal than a stat for this, but just how Jalen Hurts has not been doing what he's been doing in the past, which always stood out to me as a negative, especially in practice, where he would just hold on to the ball for so long and kind of drift to one side of the field and either throw it away or maybe kind of take off running after the play was effectively already over. I think he's doing a better job of scanning the entire field, going through his reads, and then if there's an open receiver for that check down, just taking that and getting to the next play and not worried about playing hero ball as much. And I think that's a sign of growth for him.
Yeah, a very good sign. Now, I got in trouble this week a lot, BLG, so I want to throw this at you. I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about the lack of deep shots. And you just kind of talked about it there. I think there's a tremendous evolution in Jalen Hurts and what you just said. Too often he would flush right, we know. And once you do that, the play's pretty much over unless he's going to make something off schedule on his own. So, that's the whole idea of practice what you weren't good at, get better at it, evolve. I think all of that is positive. But I think there's a 50-50 here because it's such a unique player and you can't really practice off schedule stuff. So I'm not blaming Kellen Moore from that aspect of it. But I hear these 2.3 seconds and 2.3 seconds, him and Doug Nussmeier, and I smile at there. You know where I'm going. But then I go to the preseason game in Baltimore. Jalen's playing and they won't take a deep shot. What? Why can't you take a deep shot with Kenny Pickett or Tanner McKee? Who cares? And I'm like, the Baltimore corners are just jumping everything. After all right, they're not going behind us. I just got a little asterisk there to say, keep an eye on this. Am I crazy or not?
I don't think it's crazy. I think kind of, the lack of turnovers goes in hand a little bit with, less risky throws, less, downfield kind of shots. I think Hurts specifically has been doing it enough with explosives that I feel not too worried about that. But to your point at the backups, I mean, Kenny Pickett's longest completion last week was what, like 10 yards?
11.
Or 11.
Both of them combined. Well, it might have been Tanner. I forgot who had the 11-yarder. I think it was Tanner. So,
but right around there. Yeah. And I think Tanner specifically hasn't really taken a lot of shots down the field. Now, in fairness, I don't think he's had, great downfield talent to kind of work with, to be throwing to. So some of that is also the personnel around them. I think it's a fair thing to flag, but again, I think I've seen enough from Hurts to where I believe that the deep shots are still part of this.
BLG, where are you on the linebackers right now? We've started to see, it looks like, at least from the outside, a shift into Kobe Dean being that starter. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. seems to be coming on strong. Where are you on the linebackers? Is it going to be Bond and White? Is it going to be Dean and White? Like, where are you on the linebackers? Who might be the starters come week one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because going into Tuesday's practice, we had only ever seen Devin White and Zach Bond as the first team linebackers up first in practice. And then Tuesday's practice was pretty weird because, they started, I believe, with Devin White and Nakobe Dean. And then, Zach Bond's on the second team. But then at some points, they're mixing in Ben Van Sumeren and Brandon Smith with the rest of the first team defense. Obviously, I don't think those guys are going to start. But the point is, like, they're trying a lot of different things at linebacker still, and I don't think that's settled. Plus, you have Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I think, coming on here. Obviously did not really even look like a rookie, I think, in the first preseason game. Had a good practice on Tuesday where he was able to step in front of a Jacoby Brissett, throw over the middle, and pick that off. Kobe Dean has been doing some positive things. Still, I think, question mark or liability even in coverage, but can play downhill certainly. And he created an interception for Zach Bond in Tuesday's practice when he was able to break up a pass to Austin Hooper. So right now, I still lean towards Devin White and Zach Bond, but I think Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. are making it interesting.
Buy or sell, I'm going to say week 6, no injuries. The chance that your 2 linebackers are Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Week 6-ish.
Both of them starting, you're saying?
Yeah.
I would sell both, but I would buy one of the 2.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think Nakobe's starting week 1. I do. I think he's starting week 1. I think it's been, they needed to see him stay healthy, number 1. He struggled in coverage, but all their linebackers struggle in coverage. I was looking at it the other day, BLG. I think we get hyper focused on the Eagles because we cover this team, but there aren't a lot of great coverage linebackers in the NFL.
Right.
It's like, what are people expecting? I mean, the whole point of offenses, it seems to be get these guys in space and try to take advantage of it matchup wise. So as long as you can be hold up somewhat competently, I think that's all they're looking for at linebacker. But I, in a weird way, I feel better about the linebacker situation this year because I've said this. I like their backups. So if you do lose, if you want to default as Devin White and Zach Bond as the starters, if you do lose those guys, I think you can get all the way down to Trotter and Van Sumeren, and it's not going to be that much different.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I even like something like Brandon Smith has missed some time with a concussion, but when he's been out there, he had that one, I think because he got the concussion on a physical rep that he had at the open practice where he came on as a blitzer. He's actually the Eagles, biggest off-ball linebacker they have just in terms of size. Interested to see what he might be able to do in the preseason game tonight. I think the backups there are solid. You're not looking at star potential by any means, but you're looking at guys who I think are physical, like you have Ben Van Sumeren, who play with energy, enthusiasm, fly to the ball. I think the backups are competent, or at least appear to be that way. But I think your overall point, though, too, about how, it's funny, we talk about Eagles linebackers being a problem, and certainly they have been, and I get why fans are frustrated, absolutely. At the same time, just like the context of around the league, I mean, who else do you really want other than, okay, Fred Warner, sure, absolutely. But who are these other great linebackers besides that?
Yeah, John brought that.
Yeah, especially in coverage, that part of it. Run fits, a little bit different, and they can be difference makers. And there's a lot of guys who can improve the Eagles from that standpoint. But I just think specifically in coverage, off the wall question for you, BLG, because you've been doing this a long time. At Bleeding Green Nation, everybody read him there, does a tremendous job. I get these weird. Greg Ward signed with the Indianapolis Colts. Great for Greg, keeps it going. Shane Steichen. I got so many. He should be the slot receiver on this team. And then Jalen Mills gets cut this morning. And the Eagles aren't bringing it back. They have 1 million defensive backs, but everybody's in the chat. He's trash. He's garbage. They won a Super Bowl with Jalen Mills as the starting cornerback, and everybody thinks he's garbage. The Greg Wards of the world, the Creban LeBlancs of the world. Creban's another one where they're like, bring him back. I don't get it. Have you gotten a feel for who they love and who they hate and why?
Well, Greg Ward also a Super Bowl champion.
Yes, but he was not a key. Jalen was a key contributor on that team, a starter.
The Greg Ward thing, obviously he had that run at the end of the 2019 season there where, Carson Wentz puts it together and takes over the team. So, there was like kind of a nice little feel good moment there. Jalen was interesting because I think people were so excited for him, as a rookie being like the steal. And then he outperformed expectations early on, like rotating with Leotis McKelvin at the time and as a rookie, as a starter. And then, the expectations become high because then, okay, he is a starter and now he's not quite good as people want him to be. So, that's kind of more of an up and down one. And I think his personality too. I think some people either really identify with his overconfidence and love the finger wag and everything.
I thought he had a tremendous personality.
Yeah, he has the mentality for a cornerback. You need to be delusional and irrational to some
You're
extent.
right. You're spot on, BLJ.
That is absolutely true. Yeah. And he always had that confidence. But he was a 7th round pick. And he's a Super Bowl. Yeah, I don't get it. And by the way, he wasn't a great corner. I'm not trying to say, but from my perspective would be, all right, this is a guy they should love. This is a guy they should love. And a lot of people don't. It mystifies me who they love and who they don't love. It mystifies me.
BLG, any other key takeaways that you saw at the joint practice? Things that stood out? We talked about that defensive line looked pretty good, but any other players? Because it could be Quinyon Mitchell, could be anybody. Any other player or things stand out to you from the joint practice with New England?
Yeah, I mean, this is not breaking news or anything, but A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith going to be a really big part of this offense still. Yeah. I mean, they were just targeted over and over, and especially A.J. Just like Patriots could not defend him at all. And except for one time where Christian Gonzalez broke up a pass to him, and AJ gave Christian Gonzalez props. And I think most people agree Christian Gonzalez is going to be a pretty good player. It was an interesting target when the Eagles were potentially in the mix for him leading up to that draft. So yeah, I mean, otherwise, some of these camp battles still raging on. Really interested to see tonight against the Patriots how they handle cornerback, how they handle right guard. Linebacker expected to be the rotation. I think Johnny Wilson didn't really have a great day of practice against the Patriots. Kind of would like to see if he can actually step up here in the preseason game and do anything after also really only having that one catch last week. So yeah, some of these camp battles still going on.
Yeah, I did see Johnny, some one-on-ones with Christian Gonzalez. That's a bad matchup. I mean, Christian's a really, really good player.
I did see Devontae Smith put him on skates, though. That was pretty good.
Yeah, well, Devontae's a really, really good player, and Devontae's a tremendous route runner. But Johnny's it becomes that strength versus strength versus rookie. But the one guy that kept coming up for some of the Eagles' struggles, if they had many, there wasn't many, but interior offensive line, and most of the time it was 77. Mekhi Becton. I don't know, BLG. You're a tall guy. I've asked you the tall guy question before. I don't see too many 6'8" guys out there playing guard. And it seems to be like it's shifted towards, well, Mekhi's going to be the right guard. And Tyler Steen still seems like he's limping. I don't know what's going on there. Is this a problem? Is this going to be a problem at right guard?
Yeah, I think it's important to note here. I've said this all along, even though Mekhi Becton's stock has surged in terms of him going to the first team and being with that first team. I don't think it's a matter of he's been so dominant, the Eagles have had to put him there. I don't think that's the case. I think the case is that, Tyler Steen lost ground while he was hurt and clearly didn't do enough when he was in there to definitely just shut out Mekhi Becton. So yeah, I don't think that is a settled battle in terms of, okay, Becton is looking like the week 1 starter there, but if he struggles, I don't think they're going to have the longest leash there. I think, they could go back to Tyler Steen at some point. And yeah, so to me, that's still very much an open battle as it relates to the outlook of the season. In terms of week 1, I think it's going to be Becton, but I don't think that means he has it the entire year.
We were talking about the Super Bowl just as a follow-up to that. And that year it was Isaac. They wanted Isaac to seize the job. Young player, very much like Tyler Steen is now. He wasn't able to do it. He did start the season as the starter. And then they went to Chance Warmack. And they ultimately landed on Stefan Wisniewski. Is there a plan C? Whether it's Max Sharping or I don't think it's going to be Matt Hennessy, Nick Gates, or Trevor Keegan. Could he get involved at some point? mainly taking left guard reps, but he's going to be a right guard essentially. Could there be a plan C?
I would like to see Keegan get some right guard reps. I think it's kind of weird that we haven't seen that at all to this point, especially because on the Hennessy point, like I don't think Matt Hennessy's making this team.
No, I don't think he is.
He was out there last week playing with like Nick Gates and Max Sharping. Like they took all the same amount of snaps. Whereas by contrast, like Brett Toth, was repping with Steen and whoever else was out there with the second team offensive line.
Arian Kennard played the whole game. Yeah.
So like I don't think Hennessy.
I should have mentioned him, by the way. He can play guard too. Arian, throw him in the mix.
But that's so weird to me. Like a guy playing the entire game, is that good or bad? Because
I know
it's good because he's getting a lot of reps for you to evaluate, but it's bad because if you want him to be on the team, definitely, then you're exposing him to injury by playing him the entire game.
Yeah, you're right. It is an interesting catch, and you don't see it that often. I had to double take it.
Yeah,
I'm like 100%. You rarely see that in preseason. That was Darian Kennard. We'll see how that shakes out. If there's one position, they're going outside the organization. I got wide receiver. What do you got?
Yeah, I think they probably need more help there. I think Britton Covey has had a good camp, and I think he can be reasonably like a possession kind of receiver for you that you can rotate into the mix. Basically what Greg Ward of old was. I think he can kind of be that guy. But I don't think that's a full-time kind of third receiver thing as much as a guy you mix in and as a role player. And then Johnny Wilson, I'm looking at role player here. And I know there's the thought that maybe you could split the time between those two guys. I don't think that's quite enough, especially if you have an injury to one of the top two guys. I still think you need someone else in there. Now, Paris Campbell's coming off the injury list, so maybe he finishes camp strong and he ends up being that guy. Would still need to see a lot before we feel good about that. But yeah, I think receiver, they have to do something.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing there. I don't dislike the committee approach when you're talking about wide receiver 3, but it does get scary, as you point out, as John's pointed out many times. If you lose one of your top 2 guys, you really have nothing on the outside to replace him. And I think that's where, that position gets complicated. But BLG, let's move to that. But on the defensive side of the ball, cornerbacks, Quignon's been playing a lot of slot. Isaiah Rodgers has been getting the outside reps for the most part here in camp. You think that's how it's going to be on day one? You think that's going to be your starting 3?
Yeah, I think tonight's going to be really interesting in terms of like, are the starters playing at all? We saw the defensive starters play against the Ravens. And if they don't against the Patriots, does that mean Isaiah Rodgers is sitting and he's won the job? Is Keely Ringo, who I thought looked good against the Ravens, flashed? Is he in the mix still? Is that going to be a thing? And is it possible that Quignon just takes the job on the outside, which I still think there's a chance of that happening?
Cooper's here, man. We don't know when Cooper's getting ramped up, but I think he's the butterfly effect. Where
that's
Johnny
right.
Mac's been he's been the captain of the Quignon on the outside train.
Yeah,
it's still alive. Although it's looking for now that Quignon will start out in the slot, or at least it's trending today. But I think kind of maybe not. I think it kind of went under reported or like under discussed that last week when the Eagles played their starters against the Ravens, it was Quignon and Isaiah Rodgers on the outside in base. Yeah, it was not what we see normally with more so Isaiah Rodgers and Keely with no Slay there in base. So yeah,
and it was Quignon at right corner. Rodgers was in for Slay. So that indicates to me when there are only 2 cornerbacks on the field, Mitchell's going to be on the field. But when they need a slot, he's going to move inside. And I just don't like it, Brandon, because I'm like, eventually, it's not going to happen week 1 now because Cooper's missed too much time. But it was pretty evident to me that, and it's still pretty evident that that's where they're going. And they want Cooper to play inside, and they want Quignon to play outside. So why mess with Quignon? Just put him out there, and you can make do with Avonte Maddox or Tyler Hall or whatever. I don't know. That's one I don't like. I question Vic on, which I know you can't do, but I'm going to question him. I don't want to mess with him. He's going to be a great outside corner, I think, Quignon Mitchell.
I mean, I think Vic has been honest about like not really preferring that in a perfect world. I think the way, he explained it was kind of like we're saying here, like just getting your best players on the field ultimately and trying to let the talent win out as opposed to being worried about fit as much. Now, yeah, I think there's risk there. I think something that may have been tougher, and it was not the only reason this player struggled last year, but they were moving James Bradbury inside in the slot during training camp last year.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think that's the only reason he struggled last season, but it probably didn't help him. I'm going to say that it probably didn't make him better by doing that and trying to mess with things in that regard. So I think I'm on board with trying to find a way to get Quignon on the field. But ultimately, it might just be best to just play him at corner on the outside.
Yeah, I agree. But what would that mean, you think, for Cooper DeJean this year, BLJ? I mean, people have talked about him at safety. I don't love that, but maybe that's something they would do. What do you think they do with him?
Yeah, I think they want to see him be a cornerback first before anything. I think safety, any kind of safety talk there is more like emergency basis would have to, if they have to play him there, then they want to play him there. And look, he's missed a lot of time, and I'm guessing he's not going to be able to play in this preseason game. He was only limited on Tuesday. Probably want to get him some full practice reps before you put him out there in a real game. He seemed to be confident he could play against the Vikings next week. So that'll be good to see. And there's still time for him to make up a positive impression on the coaching staff and earn some rotational playing time. But for now, I think you kind of just have to put him on the back burner until he shows he can be ready.
It's almost 53 initial 53-man roster season for us, BLG, when we try to predict things. And to me, the most difficult position to predict is safety, for the reason that you only know two, CJ and Reed. That's it. And Bradbury might get traded. I could see Avonte Maddox getting cut. If you like Caden Stearns that much and he proves he's healthy, and then you got Sidney Brown. When is he coming off the PUP list? Are they going to wait the 4 games, keep him on there? Do they want him back at practice? There's a crap load of uncertainty of what's going to happen at those backup safety spots. But they got a bunch of guys. They got to figure out what they're going to do with. And it starts with Bradbury. I had always felt the more they made him available to Vic Fangio, the more Vic would like him. I think that started to unfold. Is there a chance he's going to be here for Green Bay?
I don't think the Eagles cut James Bradbury at this point. That doesn't mean he's going to be on the team, because they could trade him, but I don't think they're going to cut him. I think he's been too good almost to cut him. Not that he's been amazing, but he's been too good to just say, not even worth making our roster. I still think, I guess I lean towards trade, because, I mean, and this showed up in the snap count last week. You have James Bradbury out there playing 1 special team snap. And okay, you're going to carry a backup safety who doesn't help out on special teams at all. Like, it's not really the best use of a roster spot. And speaking of someone who does play special teams, and you didn't mention Tristan McMullen. I like how he looked last week against the Ravens. He's been good in practice, I think, recently, especially too.
I thought he played. I did write about him. He's one of the 5 players I want to watch tonight. I thought he played very well against the Ravens, and I mentioned that whole logjam at safety as far as the backup safety. And if they trade Bradbury, and if they move Avonte back to the slot or even cut him, which I think is one of those low-key possibilities, which is weird. If they start Sidney on PUP, if they start Caden Stearns on IR, all of a sudden Tristan McCullum's got a roster spot. But that's a lot of moving pieces to get there.
Yeah. And I think McCullum has stood out on both defense, where he's taken a good amount of second team reps, and on special teams as well. With Maddox, something you said there made me think about, almost why would you roster him from a standpoint of, we saw what the league kind of thinks of him, right? Like, no one was, he worked out for the Saints or whatever, met with them. They didn't sign him. Eagles were able to sign him back. Maybe that's a guy you can keep on the practice squad, because I don't think teams are really, coming for Avonte Maddox to have him on their roster. So maybe you're looking at something like that.
Boy, he's a good player too. Sorry, Sam.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
He's a good player. I'm of the like if I'm Vic, I'm starting him week 1, like I said, in the slot. To me, he's healthy, right? I don't know how long he's going to be healthy, but he's healthy. And then I put Quinyon outside. That's my whole thought process. I don't want to mess with Quinyon. And I think short term for the Green Bay Packers, that's your best way to win because he knows how to play the position as opposed to a rookie who's never played it before. And by the way, Green Bay's got a shitload of good receivers, and Jordan Love is where he is. I thought, he probably needs a little bit more development before he's the highest paid quarterback, but nonetheless, he's been very good. I don't know. I like Avonte Maddox. I think he could still play, but your thought rings true. I mean, what am I missing? The rest of the league looked at him, and I thought at the time it was just the injuries. But when he's out there, can he not play anymore? Have you seen? I think he's been pretty good at 2 different positions.
I think last year he struggled more than we really talked about.
Well, at safety late, he was terrible in the Tampa game. Terrible.
Yeah. Well, even in training camp, like last summer, I don't think he had the best camp, and he was still, I guess, kind of coming off an injury. But again, that's always the equation with him. And another reason why I think, like you said, he might not be, a hot commodity on the market because a team might be like, we don't want to risk using a roster spot on this guy who might not be available for us, and we can't count on him. So another reason why maybe the practice squad could make sense here. I've liked Avonte in the past. I just wonder, I guess, sometimes with these players, the injuries take a toll at a certain point and they're just not the same player. And plus, he's been around for a bit now. He's approaching 30. So I wonder if, what is he? He is 28 right now, and he turns 29 in March. So, I wonder if he's just not quite the same player anymore.
BLG, last question for me. Preseason game tonight. I'm not going to make you name 5, but Johnny Mack gave me his 5 he's going to watch. Any players that you're looking to watch tonight? Maybe back end guys, maybe guys fighting for a roster spot. Anybody piquing your interest tonight going into the game?
Yeah, so I have a list on Bleeding Your Nation of the 20 players. So I really narrowed it down.
I'm not going that deep.
There you go. I like that, BLG.
I need to focus, BLG.
I have a tough time narrowing it down, as you can tell. I really want to see. I'm going to go chalk here. I want to see the backup quarterbacks do something. Look competent. Kenny Pickett didn't impress me last week. I talked earlier in the show. It didn't have a single completion over 10 or 11 yards.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And barely even attempted passes downfield. Would like to see it's not asking for him to light the world on fire. Just look, some kind of competency here. And then Tanner McKee specifically, it's just time to give him reps with the second team offense in the preseason. They've been doing that in practice. I don't get why you won't do it. You're so stubborn, won't do it in the preseason. It's not even that I'm thinking Tanner McKee is he's so great and he just needs help and he'll overtake Kenny Pickett guaranteed if he gets a chance. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying I feel like the Eagles owe it to themselves. If you're going to evaluate Tanner McKee, honestly, I think you need to do it with a supporting cast that can kind of give him more help than none at all, which is basically what he got last week.
All right. At Brandon Galton, make sure you read that. 20 players worth watching in tonight's preseason game, bleedinggreennation.com. What, by the way, we got this question before, so I'll leave that there with you. Who's your favorite of the bottom 3 running backs who all played well? All the running backs who played in Baltimore played well. Yeah. Every single one of them. So Lou Nichols, Nick was raving about Lou Nichols. Yeah. Ty Davis-Price ran it well. And then Kendall Milton was the closer. He was Mariano Rivera getting first downs. Who's your favorite of that group?
So I think, TDP had the best numbers, but it's, the drops in training camp.
The drops have been a problem. I mentioned them earlier. Yeah.
Big time problem. And he had a fumble, I think, in OTAs too as well. So the ball security as a whole, I just don't trust it. I know Bo Wolf is a big Lou Nichols guy. I know Nick Sirianni apparently.
Nick Sirianni, man. Love it. He wouldn't stop. I asked him about that, and he just wouldn't stop raving about Lou Nichols. I think Howie is a Kendall Milton guy because undrafted free agent.
Well, I'm with Howie. I really thought Kendall Milton showed some juice late in that game last week, and I would like to see him kind of get some second team opportunities instead of just being with the third team as well. I think he's shown the most high end level juice of these guys.
There you have it.
BLG, good stuff there, man. Thanks for joining the show today. Great stuff. As always, we've been following your work. Great job covering the joint practice, covering training camp all throughout the summer so far. We'll talk to you next week. All right, man?
See you guys.
Thanks, bud.
There's BLG joining us on Birds 365. Good stuff there. I want to get a final timeout in, but it looks like we got a new member. CZ, thanks for becoming a member, man. We appreciate you joining. I appreciate the support of the channel. Thank you so much, CZ, for becoming a member. You're officially eligible now for the Saquon Barkley jersey on our giveaway this year. We'll be giving away hopefully one a week, everybody, if he can get 120. Now, I don't know if he'll be doing that, but 125 yards every time.
125 is going to be a good season if we're giving away one a week.
If we're giving away one a week, Johnny Mac, that's you're nearing. I don't know how close to historic, but close. I mean, he's going to be north of 2,000 yards.
125 a week, yeah. That's going to be a good season for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, I would love to give away 20, Johnny Mac, but I don't know if we will. Let's go to our super chat here from Surgical. Surgical, thank you, man. $10. We appreciate that. He says, I know you guys have a slight worry about short passes. Wasn't Hurts throwing a lot of running back screens last camp and never did in season? Johnny Mac, you would know that answer better than I would.
Well, it's a different offense. Like, again, it's not about Jalen Hurts. I think people can't get over that. It's about, and again, I go back to the Baltimore game and what BLG was just talking about, and I talked about it, was Kenny Pickett, Tanner McKee. It wasn't Jalen Hurts. To me, it's about the default setting of the offensive coordinator, whose own words are 2.3 seconds, 2.3 seconds, which I got, I think Doug Nussmeier got in a little bit of trouble revealing that, although I went back and he mentioned it in Dallas a bunch as well. And in other words, he wants to get the football out of the quarterback's hands in 2.3 seconds or less, which is never going to happen with Jalen Hurts, number one. Number two, I don't want him to become that quarterback, which is pretty consistently, that's the point guard quarterback. That's the Mo Cheeks quarterback for old school basketball fans, or newer school Eric Snow the last time the Sixers went to the NBA Finals. That's that type of quarterback. Jalen is too much of a playmaker for that. Again, I used the term Brock Purdy. I don't want to turn him into Brock Purdy. I think that's a mistake. And I don't think Kellen Moore's trying to do that. I just have a little bit of a concern after last week's game in Baltimore with Kenny Pickett, Tanner McKee, never throwing the football. There was a fade that maybe went about 15 yards in the air that weren't. It's not even about being successful. It's about making sure the defense knows they got to respect it. And if you watch the Baltimore game, it started with Nate Wiggins, and that was just a really talented cover corner early in the game, locking down receivers that can't get away from him. That to me is a little bit different. But then as the game progressed, it was nobody had concern on Baltimore that they were going above them. They were going over the top, so they were jumping every route. And like, it's a preseason game with second or third. I'm not trying to say this is a problem. I'm just trying to say I got a little bit of a check mark to keep an eye on that and see if that develops. Because
I think it's completely fair, by the way. I mean, look, I don't have as big of a concern on it as you do, but I do think what you are saying makes a lot of sense, and it's fair to look for that. So we'll be watching that. Surgical, thank you for the super chat, man. And CZ, thank you for becoming a member. Thanks to all of our super chats today. D Love, Angel, Surgical, CZ becoming a member. Good stuff there. Johnny Mac, good show today, man. Only 3 minutes left to go. It's game day. We'll be doing a little bit of a post game tonight, right? You don't have to do the press conferences, so maybe we can just get live. I don't know if you're going to watch them from afar, but we'll coordinate on that, and we'll be live after the game. Like I said to everybody, I will not be doing a watch party tonight for the game tonight. What time is the game tonight, John? Is it 7, 8?
I believe it's 7:30, but I'll double check. Yeah. I'm not. That tells you how much I pay attention to preseason games.
Yeah, well,
I shouldn't give it. But yeah, I mean they're playing football, and even if it's cosplay football, it is
7. It says
7:00. Yeah, 7:00. NBC 10. So no, you don't have to worry about cozy TV tonight.
No cozy TV for everybody.
I wish it were at 1:00. To be honest,
yeah, that'd be nice. 1:00. We'll be wrapping it up thing by 4:00. That'd be nice. Eduardo says, "Great show. Appreciate you, Eduardo." Didn't have my fastball today, but we got through it good, and I thought BLG was.
And I saw another one. The Eagles are not trading Kenny Pickett, and the Vikings don't want Kenny Pickett. I gotta go down that route again. The Eagles want Kenny Pickett to be their backup for 2 years, so get used to it.
I don't know about Kenny Pickett. I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't really care, to be honest with you, who our backup quarterback is, as long as they're somewhat competent. But I don't think he's all that great. I think he's a downgrade from Gardner Minshew, who was my favorite.
You can make that argument. I thought people underrated Gardner.
I think he's better than Mariota, but I think he's worse.
That's where I was going. He's better than Marcus. He's probably not as good as Gardner, but I think he's got a bigger upside than Gardner if he continues to develop. And remember, if he's forced to play, which you do not want, he's not playing with John Ross and Johnny Wilson.
Yeah, right. You
Darren
can create
Kennard.
An offense that just features your stars,
Yes. He's playing with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson. So keep that in mind.
Appreciate everybody being here in the chat today. Good show today. Johnny Mac, thanks for helping me get through it. Thanks to BLG for joining. CZ, Mad Birds over here. James Jones, our resident Commander fan. Cilio's giving James Jones a lot of fodder. John, he thinks Jaden Daniels is gonna take off.
Daniels.
Yeah, he thinks he's gonna take off this year.
Of all the rookie quarterbacks, I'm a Jaden Daniels guy, but I don't think it's gonna.
How many wins do you think the Commanders have this year?
6 or 7.
That's about where
I don't think he's going to be CJ Stroud. And
and look, we can't start acting like every rookie quarterback is going to be that. That was the exception, not the rule.
I think he's going to be the best of this group long term.
I don't know. I like Caleb Williams. I like Caleb. I think he's going to be
good. I'm probably a little bit biased, as I said. I
like them both. I don't dislike either of them. I think they're both good.
I don't like that he landed with the Bears because the Bears screw everything up. That's true. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, boy, that he played Notre Dame, which was a good defense last year, in college football, but he was just so bad in that game. I couldn't get over it. And everybody has bad games, but it wasn't even about the bad game. It was poor decision making, and that kind of stuff. So that gave me a little bit more concern over Caleb Williams. But I think overall it's got more to do. The Bears have had, you got to go back to Sid Luckman and Jim McMahon as a competent quarterback. I mean, they just screw up quarterbacks as they did with Justin Fields.
I tell you what, though, John, he's got some players to throw that ball to. So I think
they do. They did. They've done a better job.
Got to give Ryan Poles a little bit of credit for that. He definitely has
DJ Moore. I think about the Sam Hankins.
I even like that rookie they got, Rome Odunze. I think that.
And they got. Don't forget Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen. There. I mean, that's what I mean. So if Caleb Williams can be like, okay, I think he'll be able to.
Yeah, it's always about the offensive line.
Look
at what happened with New England, and they're putting Drake May behind that offensive line. JJ McCarthy looked great in his first preseason game, 2 long touchdowns, and he shows up the next day with needing a meniscus surgery because his interior offensive line was garbage. I don't care about the receivers until you get the offensive line right. And Chicago has had many, many issues with their offensive line in recent recent seasons.
Yep, no doubt about it. Johnny Mac, good show today, man. We'll be talking to you tonight after the game. Enjoy it, Johnny Mac, from the couch. And you don't watch many games from the couch. I know.
No. And I will not be listening to whoever's doing the game, and that's not an insult to them. That's just it's just the way I do it.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. We will talk to you tonight. All right, man. Good show.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Hit that like button on your way out. Let me make sure we got 100 likes. 99. Come on, everybody. We got.
Oh, by the way, I mentioned I have your exact coffee cup, Zander.
Do you?
Mine is far more worn than yours.
Somebody wait. I got my thing.
No, I don't have it today. Today I have
love my dog, it says.
Actual pictures of my
dog, yeah, I love
right?
that one that you have. Yeah.
But I have that exact coffee mug.
We are dog people here, Johnny Mac, as well. And when you have a scratchy throat, John, and you have somebody that makes you a nice bone broth to soothe the throat, you don't complain about a coffee cup or anything. You take it and you enjoy it and you appreciate it. And that's what I had this morning. So I appreciate that. But John, good show, man. I'll talk to you tonight. All right, brother?
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. See you, everybody.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.